It takes a minute to warm up.
The light's on.
Yep, here we go. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, now, hold on here. I need to do that, actually. I'll go over to YouTube Live.
So we're in a Brian?
Yeah, I'm just going to where, if, just in case anybody, writes in, I can see it.
Okay, I hereby call this meeting to order of the Walton Hills Infrastructure Committee. And everybody's got an agenda, right?
Yes.
Oh, come
Guess we'll
on.
do the Pledge of Allegiance, then a roll call.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America. Then roll call, Mr. Wheaton.
Present.
Danny Mandell's present, Brian Spitznagel,
Here.
and Jennifer Allen. And the mayor.
Present.
Okay. So, roll call, any old business? This is all old business, huh?
Kinda.
Yeah.
New business, I guess, the Walton Hills Road programs. Grant funded water main replacement projects and the road program, that's what we're gonna discuss. Mr. Gelati,
Yes.
you're on.
I'm on? Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Linville. 5A and 5B road program projects and grant-funded water main replacement projects are on the agenda here. And they really kind of go together, so I guess we'll talk about them together since they are kind of intertwined. Grant-funded water main replacement projects, as we know, there's two of them. One is Tulip Lane, which needs to be performed in 2022, and the other is Rotary Drive water main replacement, which needs to be performed in 2023 per the terms of the grant, so that the grant expires after those years for those two roads. So that's where we stand with water main replacement projects. As you guys are probably aware, every year we apply for other roads as well for a water main replacement grant. For the last 3 years, we've been applying for Hickory and Chestnut, and also a couple other roads dotted throughout the village. None of those have been successful, Hickory and Chestnut. Quite honestly, over the last 3 years, they just haven't scored high enough on the application to be funded. And, you know, I don't think they will be in the future. You know, the scoring, unfortunately, kind of is the scoring with Cleveland Water Department. There's a lot of criteria. One of the, I guess we'll call it main criteria, or the heavier weighted criteria, is the number of breaks on the road. And, you know, I think there just haven't been as many breaks on Hickory or Chestnut as there have been on other roads in the village and throughout all of Cleveland Water's territory. So that's where we're at now. And in future years, my plan is to apply to Cleveland Water for Walton Road. As we know, there's been a lot of breaks on Walton Road. I've lost count. I'm not even sure exactly how many water main breaks we've had on Walton Road over the last couple of years. So I think that's likely our best candidate to get a grant to replace the water main in the upcoming years.
Is that gonna be the full length? No, that's paving Walton Road.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Is that paving Walton Road? Did I understand that?
No, so the water main grant funding is just to replace the water main itself underground.
On Walton Road.
Yes, or on any road, whichever road
Okay.
happens to be the subject. So the resurfacing is a separate item handled by the community or handled by the village separately. So,
Okay.
so that's where we stand with grant-funded water main replacement projects. As far as road program projects,
Mr. Gillette?
yes.
Before you go to the road program, can I ask you a couple of questions on the water main piece? I know you mentioned in future years, we would be applying for Walton Road. Any crystal ball, how many years out? We're talking 2, 3 years, 1 year?
So the program with Cleveland Water works like this. If you're awarded the grant to replace the water main, you have 3 years to begin the construction, to execute the project. So, for instance, if in 2025, or pardon me, if in 2022, we applied for a grant to Cleveland Water and it was successful, if we got funded, then we would have until 2025 to actually perform the work, actually execute the water main replacement. So that's how their program works, and that's how things are scheduled.
Okay. So another question as it relates to the other areas that you've applied to, I'm sorry, Chestnut, Hickory, and I believe Connolly?
I think we applied for Connolly once or twice as well, unsuccessfully.
So when we are unsuccessful, does Cleveland Water share where we rank? Do they provide
yeah.
that type of
Yeah,
feedback?
they provide the feedback, they provide the list of all the applications throughout Cleveland Water's territory, which is, I don't know, 40 communities or whatever they're in. So they provide you that list with the scoring, so you see where you ranked. So we have all that information.
Okay. Another question I have regarding Hickory, Chestnut, and Connolly. Do you have cost estimates
Yeah, that's part of the application.
that you could share with us at some point, the cost estimate
yeah.
of those water main replacements, should we get into a situation where Walton Hills has to consider that work, should we get into, who knows what water mains will do,
Yeah.
and as part of future outlook.
Yeah, we can provide you those cost estimates. That's no problem.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chilati,
You didn't say sir, did you?
Chair.
Oh.
Uh,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Gelati. I want to talk about options first of all, and then talk about funding of those options. The first option is, now it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that TULIP is going to be done by the water department, correct?
So the program works like this. The village, we actually, it becomes our project. So as a village, we prepare the plans, we conduct the public bid, we administer the work, and Cleveland Water pays for it all. So it's not a Cleveland Water crew, if you will. It won't be
Okay.
their white trucks with their blue logo on the side out there performing the work. It'll be a utility contractor that the village hires through a public bid process, just like any other project.
Okay, so.
If that was your question. I'm-
Yeah, that's
okay,
part of my
okay.
question. That explains, I think. So, if we choose not to do that Tulip Road project, we then lose that grant funding for Tulip Road.
Correct.
Okay, so we either do it next year or we lose that, and who knows, correct me if I'm wrong, who knows when or if we would get that project back.
Yeah, no guarantee that that a future application would be successful, correct.
Okay. So considering that, your thoughts on, well, couple things. Your thoughts, first of all, on just paving Tulip, or doing the project on Tulip and paving the entire horseshoe. Would there be any benefit to doing one over the other?
Yeah, I would recommend that we pave the entire horseshoe, as we call it, hickory, chestnut, and tulip, all at the same time. I think it only makes sense. I think it's good planning. I think it would be kind of poor planning not to do it that way. And I did jot down a couple of notes on that topic. Those 3 roads that make up the horseshoe were, they were all constructed together back in the 60s as one development, of course. They were all repaved together at the same time in 1983. So I think it only makes sense for us as a village to keep those 3 roads together as a neighborhood, as a group. They all get the same treatment. Geographically, it just makes sense. Economy of scale would be better, or conversely, if we were only to pave Tulip, there would be very little economy of scale in whatever pricing we would receive to pave those roads. We already talked about the water mains on Hickory and Chestnut, the fact that, unfortunately, they're just not going to score high enough. We're just not going to get the grant funding to replace those water mains. So I think we as a village need to move forward and pave those roads as is. And I think that's about all that I had. But, and really, the same would go for any neighborhood, whether it's Barclay Estates or Ryan and Cayley Circle, Rolling Hills. Those types of neighborhoods, quite honestly, we should always be paving them as one, as a unit. It would be poor. It would be a poor choice, in my opinion, to just choose one road out of that neighborhood and not all.
Okay.
So.
For the sake of conversation, if we did choose just to do Tulip, the entire project, I see your cost is $257,000 for the estimate.
Okay.
Okay. What's a fair estimate, and I mean roundabout, I don't want to hold you down to it, I'm not holding you down, just for Tulip?
If the whole horseshoe is 257, call it 65 for Tulip. Just prorating things seems to be an approximate number.
Okay.
But yeah, like you say, let's not hold ourselves to an exact number.
Right, exactly.
What
So,
was that figure?
Let's call it
65,000?
65.
Just for Tulip?
Just for Tulip, and that's just a guesstimate. The idea has been floated to not do the horseshoe this year, or pave those other 2 roads and do Barclay Estates. And I don't, it's not that I don't care one way or the other, it's just that some questions arise out of that, which I did write. Angela, you probably saw the email, I don't know if you did or not, but the question I have one is from an engineering perspective, one is from the finance perspective. The engineering perspective is, okay, we aren't going to do, let's say we aren't going to do that horseshoe next year. We decide not to, just for the sake of conversation. This is just conversation. Is it fair to then just rip off the 2022 page and say we're not going to do that page and roll 2023 over to 2022? Or from an engineering perspective, since we aren't doing those particular roads or wouldn't be doing the horseshoe, would that from the engineering perspective, change as far as the order of roads that you would recommend to do?
Yeah, so, I guess from an engineering perspective, I would not wanna, like you say, rip off 2022, because then we would lose the grant funding to
Mhm.
replace the water main on Tulip Lane. That would be, we'd be giving the money back.
Sure.
Quite honestly, I don't think we wanna do that.
Right.
You know, especially, we know that there's been a history of water main breaks on Tulip Lane, several of them. And, you know, we have, Cleveland Water's provided us with the grant to replace the water main. I would hate for us to give it back, and then in future years, there's a problem with the old water main on
Mhm.
Tulip Lane, and then, you know, as an infrastructure committee and service director and engineer, we kind of look at each other and kick ourselves for not taking the grant when we had it, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? That would be my fear,
Right.
from an engineering point of view, yes.
Right.
Mhm.
So let's say, again, conversation, let's just say we chose to do Tulip.
Mhm.
Okay, we chose to do that project with the water company
Mhm.
and did not choose to pay the entire horseshoe. Put
Okay.
that money elsewhere on roads that we considered just as bad or worse.
Mhm.
Now, I know that Barclay Estates was done in '02,
Uh-huh.
and the horseshoe basically in the '80s,
Yeah,
something like that.
83 according to the record.
The question I have, and all of those roads are listed as poor.
Mhm.
The question I have, considering all of those poor roads, is some may be poor, some may be very poor.
Mhm.
For example, Barclay Estates, it would be my opinion, I don't know if this is true or not, that gets more road traffic than the horseshoe does. So even though all those are rated poor,
Mhm.
my question is, let's say again, we just decided to do Tulip, and we were gonna put money towards other roads. Just because Barclay was paved, you know, years, a decade or more after the horseshoe, to me, that doesn't make it necessarily in better condition. It depends on a whole factor of things that may, Barclay may be actually worse than the rest of the roads on the horseshoe. See where I'm getting at?
Yeah,
So,
I think I see where you're going.
so answer me that, and we all know where the entrance to Barclay Estates is. We know where that we know it's, and we had discussed that at the last few meetings of the committee
Mhm.
about spot repairing those, you know,
Mhm.
and putting money towards those in next year's budget.
Mhm.
In your opinion, are the roads on Barclay Estates, would they be better off paved before the horseshoe, the rest of the horseshoe, or is the horseshoe in worse or the same
Yeah, and
condition?
I'll be honest with you, there's, I guess really on the, on our list here, you know, you guys have
Yeah.
seen this before, I think. There's a number of roads that are in poor condition. The 3 roads that make up the horseshoe, the roads that make up Barclay Estates, also, you know, Fern and Logan appear on this list. Oddly enough, Dunham Road and Tinkers Creek appear on this list, but we know they're no longer poor, thankfully. I guess I would answer your question this way. They're all in really poor condition,
Mhm.
and they're all low-traffic roads, so we're really kind of splitting hairs. I mean, I could go out, we give poor, fair to poor, fair, good, and very good. There's 5 categories.
Mhm.
In my mind, for us as a village, that's sufficient. If somebody were to go out there and, let's say, you gave it a scoring of 0 to 100. 100 being brand new perfect road, 0 being the worst possible score. We could go out there and I could give one of these poor roads, that's 45. You might say 47. You might say 43. It really becomes a little bit in the eye of the beholder, or in, you know, just somebody's perspective or opinion. At that point, we're really splitting hairs. I guess what I'm saying is all of these roads that are in the poor category and that, you know, we are trying or planning to tackle, at least in the next 3 years of the 5-year plan, they're all in poor condition. We're splitting hairs. Almost, what's the difference? And they're all low traffic roads too. None of them take traffic like Alexander, or even take traffic like Egbert, Walton, Dunham, Sagamore. So I would lump them all in the same category. I'd hate for us to get into a situation where we try to figure out which one is a little bit worse than the other. Here's the thing too, think about it this way, I guess I'll talk off the cuff. Somebody could look at the roads and they could say, well, Hickory is the worst road. The second worst road is Rochelle. Then the third worst road is Fern. What do? We're going to go around and pave one road here, one road there, and one road over there. And again, that's poor planning. We look disjointed. There's no economy of scale. Our contractor is bouncing around. And residents might get frustrated too. You know what I mean? They'll say, well, my road's worse. Or you paved that road right next to me. I still got to drive on this bumpy road to get to my new road. It's, there's a lot of unintended consequences. Does that answer too long?
No, it's a great, thank you for
Sorry,
your,
guys.
no, I thank you for your candor and
got me
willingness
talking.
to speak freely, and that's what we need. That's what the advice we need.
Yeah.
The only other thing is, it's from a financial standpoint, and we're talking $257,000 for the horseshoe. And we do have something from the finance director that I have to talk to her because there's a total cost here. Let's say we do everything. Forget about the roads for a minute, which exact roads we're going to do. It comes up to the total cost for the renewal and the money and new money for going into debt. And this includes the base amount, underwriter's fee, legal fees, cost of insurance, cost of interest, $56,437.75. Now I'm taking this, Angela isn't here to ask the question right now, maybe.
Brian, you call it.
Okay. Is this a one-time fee, or is this, for example, to me, this doesn't tell me the entire picture. For example, if I was going in to buy, to get a mortgage for a new house, and my mortgage was $300,000, and the bank said, well, it's going to cost you $2,500 to do the paperwork, okay? That's what, to me, that's what this is telling me. It's not telling me what my mortgage payments are. So what the questions I have for the finance director are, how much is this new debt going to impact our budget? Again, I'll stress we're only ahead 42,000 or thereabouts for this year, and I understand these need to be paved and everything. What is the minimum amount we can pay back on that debt per year? What is the total debt that the village can incur? Because I know there's a financial formula that they use based on what you have in the bank and other things. So based on our financial picture, what's the dollar amount? And Angela probably can't give us an exact number, obviously, but a roundabout good number that probably this firm, Stifel, can come up with. how that's going to impact our budget, so we can put that in the budget as we're doing it towards the end of the year. We have other things to purchase too, obviously, which we've talked about. And then the year after that, there's going to be added debt. So I want to know how much debt we can incur and how much that is, the dollar amount that's going to affect the budget per year. So I understand this cost is $56,000, but that's the cost of getting the loan. It's not the cost of our debt payments every year. And I know we can pay more, which we have every year. We've paid more or less over the years. But there is a minimum amount that we must pay. And that minimum amount at least has to be factored into our budget. You know, I can't make a recommendation on doing anything without a complete picture. And that's just me personally. I'm only one of 6 votes. But if I don't have a complete picture of what it's doing to our budget, I know this stuff needs to be done. But that's where I'm sitting right now, and hopefully Angela can answer these questions.
Okay, I do have a question. I want to go back to,
Yeah.
you know, maybe we can get those answers from Angela.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the horseshoe piece. I just want to be clear that when I sent my email over the weekend on Friday, my concern with the horseshoe, after Mr. Gelati, you mentioned that TULIP is the only area funded for water main replacement. Okay, my concern became, is it, from an engineering perspective, is it now still feasible, practical to pave the entire horseshoe, knowing that we still have infrastructure underneath that has proven, including in 2021, to have water main breaks. I know on Chestnut in 2021, right in the middle of at least one, if not 2, this year. So my concern is decoupling the paving aspect from the water main replacement. Absolutely, under no circumstances should we leave money on the table as it relates to the $147,000 of grant money to replace the water main. Yes, we without a doubt need to move forward with that. The question becomes, in my mind, is does replacing the water main on TULIP, is that now the preceding event to paving the entire horseshoe? And that's where I've decoupled, in my mind, I've kind of decoupled the two. I'm not being an engineer, but knowing that when you strengthen one section of pipe, meaning the TULIP area, and then you have these other 2 anchors or legs that have had leaks in the past, can we predict what the impact will be now that you have this strengthened area called TULIP and these other 2 legs that have still the aged infrastructure? And that's where I'm decoupling the paving aspect, knowing that from my conversations with Commissioner Kalman and kind of seeing what Cleveland Water has done in the past. When the water main replacement, and you guys can help me if I'm off base here, when the water main replacement project is done, there is when that line is done, they fill that hole with concrete initially, or unless we contract out for that, and then there's a topping of asphalt, so that area where the water main replacement will get some restoration. It may not be the entire full scope lane of TULIP. And again, so that's where I'm decoupling, and that's the discussion I kind of want to hear. What are the risks for us to pave the entire horseshoe, knowing that we've applied for grant funding for water mains for Hickory and Chestnut, but unsuccessful. They didn't score high enough, but we know there's some risk there.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. That's the question that I have in
Yeah.
my mind.
So, point well taken. Good question. I have about a dozen thoughts, and forgive me, I'm probably going to forget half of them by the time I get to the end of my answer.
We'll give you time to
Thank you.
recall them.
Yeah. I guess several things. One, the water main could break on any road at any time. Old no water main, new water main, old asphalt, new asphalt. Bing bing happens all over the village, a fair amount. So in the year or years preceding paving a road, we always do look at the condition of the water main, and if in any way reasonably possible, sorry to keep you awake. I'm putting them to sleep with my answer, but, so if in any way, we can get the grant funding to replace the water main under the pavement, of course we do it. Like we say, we've tried 3 years in a row now, and I think we've come to the realization that Hickory and Chestnut are just not gonna score high enough. They haven't for 3 years. The scoring is not gonna tremendously or miraculously change in the next year or 2 or 3. So we just have to go forward with, the Tulip Lane Water Main project, and in my opinion, paving the horseshoe as one unit, as we've already discussed. There is I'll give a little bit of history. As many of you guys know, I have the same position over in Macedonia. And there is a neighborhood called the Birdie Streets, for slang, kind of like we use horseshoe, I guess.
Mhm.
There's 4 roads. They all are named after a bird. And
That's the Birdie Street.
those are the Birdie Streets. So this was back in 17 and 18, in that time. The asphalt pavement was in terrible condition on all 4 roads. And the water main was not in very good shape either on all 4 roads. There was a pretty fair history of breaks. So we went through this same exercise, and we applied multiple times for the water main replacement grant, and unfortunately only one of the 4 roads received the grant. And we got to the point where, okay, these roads are in terrible shape. These residents have been waiting. We've got the water main replacement on 1 road funded, so we've got to do that. We can't give that back. I think everyone agrees, and every town would agree. And so we went forward with the same procedure. We replaced the water main on the 1 street that was grant funded, free of charge to the city. And we paved the whole neighborhood all at once, and knock on wood, we haven't had a water main break on any of the other 3 streets. I've probably jinxed it.
Yeah.
It'll probably be a leak tomorrow.
Your phone's gonna ring.
It's probably ringing as soon as I get out of here, but I guess, so there's a little history or a little case study of a very similar situation. To your point, is there a risk? Yeah, there's a risk on every road. We just paved Dunham, we just paved Tinker's Creek, we paved Alexander Road here 3 summers ago, whenever it was. Every road that we pave in every town, there is that risk. So, and to your point also, as far as underground utilities are concerned, it's not only the water main, it's also the storm sewers as well, or the crossover culvert pipes. We don't have a whole lot of storm sewers in the village. So of course we take a look at that, and if any of the culvert pipes that cross under the road are in bad shape, of course those get replaced as part of and right before the road paving project. So, I had a few other thoughts, but I've forgotten them already. Sorry about that.
Okay, so that again, we'll get you for 1 second. That's still my main concern, is that, let's decouple them. I mean, if we move forward with a horseshoe it's no longer necessarily, in my opinion, not necessarily contingent upon grant funding, because we only have grant funding for the one road. It's based on the condition of the horseshoe, which is poor. We know it's poor. And also, Chairman, before we turn it over to Councilwoman Allen, I'm also the same opinion as Councilman Spitznagle as it relates to the ability of Walton Hills to pay back whatever we may, and I kind of understand this document, but not exactly clear what's all in the estimated $800,000, if that's Barclay, Horseshoe, as well as the roof. I'm not quite sure what's all in that $800,000. But the ability to repay is important, and I do want to say, and I wanted to say this in the beginning, that as you mentioned, Mr. Gelati, Alexander Road, Dunham Road, the big Dunham Road project that was just done last year, and the village's cost, whatever it was, $600,000-$700,000. The widening of Northfield Road recently, and of course, you know, going back a little further, the inter-community, inter-county grand project on Sagamore Road.
There's another example.
Another good example, and what I'm saying, these are good examples of necessary infrastructure projects getting done. However, these are on our, you know, more heavily traveled, partially funded, and, you know, in some cases fully funded, non-residential roads. And I'm just, you know, I just believe at this point, it's inherent, or it's imperative for Walton Hills as a village, as a walking village, a walking in the street village by choice, because we don't want sidewalks as a village, that it is imperative that that same commitment that we find every year for our main roads, we have to find we have to find a way to commit to a road program. Our engineer has already done the work and done the estimates and, you know, done the condition assessments. It's just now it's up to council and administration to, you know,
Becomes
appropriate.
a finance question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, because it's imperative. We know daily, and I know Chairman Linville sees it every day. There's more walkers, more, you know, whether it's with children, individuals, walking dogs, every single day, it seems like, in Walton Hills. And we've chosen not to have sidewalks. So our roads, our residential roads are the village residents' walking lanes. And it's a safety factor when we don't keep our roads up to par. So I just want to be on record as saying, you know, it's upon council and our administration to find a way to put some priority on these residential roads. And this, you've done the work. You've given us the.
Yeah, no, that's what I was gonna say. I hear you, I agree. Yeah, you guys all have the information. You know my thoughts, you know, my recommendation, of course, is that we as a village execute the plan, we commit to the plan, we stick to the plan. I know it's really becomes a financial question at this point, and a difficult financial question, so if we're not able to stick to the plan, I understand, my feelings aren't hurt, but I want to give you guys what I feel is good information right here.
Yeah, one more point. I
Yeah.
do want to say, although the plan is there, you know, there has been, you know, plan has been, in, not just with these road program, but in other areas where there's the roof, equipment for the service department has been pushed back. You know, this same plan, we saw some of the same plan a couple of years ago. And that's where I'm saying, you know, Chairman Linville, Member Spitznagle, and others, you know, we don't want to become like the old saying with the Browns and the Indians, you know, the wait till next year thing, where, you know, the plan just keeps getting pushed back. We have to knuckle down and get it done.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. from Mr. Gelati. If we decided to do the horseshoe, and next year, 2 years from now, whenever, the water company says we'll go ahead and do those other 2 roads or 1 more road, how much of an impact on the new road surface would there actually be with them replacing
Yeah, well, I
that?
mean, of course, there would be an impact on the new road in other words, your hypothetical situation is we as a village go forward with the horseshoe plan.
Mhm.
We pave all 3 roads in the horseshoe. And then a year or 2 in the future, Cleveland Water comes to us and says, we're gonna replace the water main on Hickory.
Right.
But yes, of course, that would disturb the new asphalt surface, but that wouldn't happen for a few reasons. First of all, you know, once we pave the road, we're not going to apply for that grant any longer, like I was saying, because we know it's just not going to score high enough, and we want to concentrate our efforts in other areas like Walton Road. And you know, with the road being repaved, Cleveland Water is not going to force a project like that upon us in the near future. I don't want to use the word moratorium, but they're not going to do it. So, yeah, I guess I understand your point. The answer to your question is yes, but in reality, it's not going to happen. It can't happen. So.
Well, they wouldn't tear up the entire road, it would be a portion thereof, right?
Oh, you
where
mean
the-
if there
where-
was a water main leak one day at
Yeah,
one location?
or
Yeah.
they just,
So if there's
hypothetically,
Yeah,
if they
so-
decided to do that, are we talking, the water main's on the side of the road, correct?
yes, that's where I was going to go.
So they're not gonna tear up the entire road, they would tear up a portion, which would then have to be repaved, only a portion of it.
Correct. So, again, the hypothetical situation, we execute the horseshoe plan,
Yeah.
pave all 3 roads. 6 months later, there's a water main leak right here in front of somebody's house.
Right.
One spot. Water's bubbling up out of the ground. To your point, the water main is actually located kind of in the grass.
Okay.
So sometimes they actually can fix it without even touching the asphalt. If the break is big enough and the hole becomes big enough, then yes, they'll have to remove a portion of the asphalt road to do the repair to the water main. And then, of course, that gets restored, and as Rob knows, we get reimbursed for the cost of that asphalt surface patch, so there's no cost to the village. So, if that was your question.
If I could just make a quick
Yes.
comment.
Chair recognizes Mrs. Allen, she's got a point.
So I can be loud enough and clear enough. A couple of questions. Joe, you said that, yes, Hickory and Chestnut, you're not going to be applying for because they were scored low. And I see according to your plan that you've got Rotary in 23 and Walton in 26 that you would be applying for, water main replacements
Okay.
specifically.
Mhm.
So potentially, we are not looking for another water main replacement until 29 then after that, correct? Because you can only apply for 1 water main at a time?
No, so, to clarify, the Rotary Drive water main replacement, that grant has already been awarded
Okay.
to the village. We have until 2023 to execute the
Get it
project,
done.
otherwise we lose the grant, we have to give the money back, so.
Okay, so then next
so-
one you would be applying for is Walton.
So, correct, and.
Connolly, right? Connolly. I believe Connolly. If
Uh,
Rotary was awarded, you
Honestly,
had
Mr.
Connolly.
Spitznagel, I think Connolly kind of falls into the category of, Hickory and Chestnut, where it's
It's not scoring.
just.
Oh, it's not scoring?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We're never gonna get that grant, so
Okay.
hence, another reason why I wanna focus my efforts on Walton
I
Road.
see, okay.
And to your point, Walton is on here, you're right, for 2026.
Okay.
And if you see in the row underneath it there, I have Cleveland Water Department funding pending, because we don't know. But that's my my plan.
Right.
So
But my
we've gotta
point-
have a plan, I guess.
Right,
Yeah.
but my point would be that it wouldn't, okay, so it wouldn't be until that's potentially awarded in, by 26, that we would start looking at other water mains to possibly put grants in for.
Yeah, so, you know, I would think here over the next year or two, you know, I'm gonna focus on trying to get the water main on Walton Road, funded for a replacement. And, yeah, if we're successful with Walton Road, then great, we've got that one in our back pocket. We'll go for some other roads. Yeah, I think that's the strategy.
Okay. The other question I had for you was the latest road update that you gave us. Some of the streets have moved.
Okay.
Kern and Logan were originally slated for 22 in the previous
Oh.
road guide that you gave us.
Okay.
And Dunham Lane also, but now they are being projected for 24.
24, okay.
So I just wondered, how is it that you come about moving these from different years? Are you trying to just keep a certain dollar amount?
Yeah, I think
Trying
that's
to
part of
juggle
it, trying not to lump too much into one year. I think from a general, overall perspective, we're probably better off if we pave a few roads each year. I'd hate to pave 12 roads this year and then nothing for the next 5 years. And then what happens next time we need to pave a lump of 12 roads? We have a really tough financial
Right.
issue before us. You know, how do we pay for the next 12?
Right.
So I think it's, yeah,
So I'm looking at, and in going door to door
Mhm.
over the last how many weeks, months, Dunham, Lane, Kern, and Logan are equally horrific.
they're all
And
bad.
Kern and Logan would be another one that should be done at the same time.
Correct.
together.
Uh-huh.
So it was just as an option that I was looking at it, if Kern, Logan, Dunham Lane, and then the Hammond Creek concrete work, or no, that was resurfacing. Yeah, no, that was concrete, there's 300,000 there too.
Mhm.
It's just another option of, you know, what to do with the money. Do we stick with kind of the original, the previous plan that you had, or
Yeah,
just something else to throw out
Right.
there?
yeah.
And that was part of my original question was if we weren't going to do the horseshoe at all,
Right.
we
But
just
none
tear
of
that,
these-
blank that page out and turn to the next page, or
Those roads
is it
specifically also aren't anywhere on the radar for a water main replacement,
correct?
and haven't been paved since 86, 89, you know. So I
They
don't
all
know.
need attention is what you're saying.
Yeah, they all need attention, but
Right.
I'd like Hell's opinion.
I wasn't privy to all the emails, I was only copied on one of them. So, I think I kinda got a vibe of what's being discussed, and my 2 cents is, it's nice if we get water main funding. I don't think we should let that totally dictate our road program. Because from what I'm hearing is if we don't, if we just do the replacement on Tulip, and whatever restoration needs to be done on Tulip, and then we're gonna wait for funding for their horseshoe, what happens if that doesn't come in for 15 years? I mean, in Maple Heights, there's water mains paved over that are 8 years old or older. We did Egbert Road water main replacement, how many years ago?
2012.
2012, and I had a valve come apart last year on it. So there's no rhyme, I mean, Walton Road, we're hoping to be a good candidate for when Joe puts in for that money. But if we don't get funding for a water main, that doesn't mean we shouldn't pave the road. I mean,
Yeah, what you're saying is we always want to be mindful of and consider the water main as
Right.
well as the crossover culvert pipes.
right,
But we can't let it completely drive the bus.
it
is what you're saying.
shouldn't, here's the
I
road,
agree.
you know, it's almost like, here's the program, we'll apply for whatever we can, I'll maintain any cross culverts, we'll do everything we can on the front end, but if we don't get the funding, we still have to move forward with the road program, is where, I guess, what I'm hearing, because my biggest concern is, not my biggest concern, but one of my concerns is, because one of the comments was made, like patching, not even doing a full surface on Tulip, like, we'll pop and replace the line and then we'll patch what we need to. The horseshoe's already patched enough. So that's all I meant. That's all I meant, it's my 2 cents. That's all. I wouldn't let water main replacement and grant funding dictate the road program. If we want to discuss prioritizing different things, and that's fine, but it's at the engineer's recommendation, these are poor, this is what we should address, here's the plan. Move forward with the plan, chart the course, stay the course. That's my 2 cents.
And that was kind of my point. That's why I was saying, the water main replacements on those other roads that I talked about, there's no, on
Yeah, they're not
the
really-
horizon for Barclay Estates even for a
Right.
water main replacement.
No.
No.
You know, and so that, to me, is, I agree with you, it's not exactly the same thing.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, no, I agree. It's not necessarily the same thing. It just happens that in the horseshoe discussion for the last couple of years, they have been coupled. I mean, it was, the repaving of the horseshoe has, all of our conversation has been about it following the replacement of the horseshoe water mains. And it wasn't just until this past Friday, I think it was, we got confirmation from the engineer that, hey, we're not having this funding for Hickory and Chestnut. It's just not going to happen. So then that's where okay, let's have the discussion around, is it feasible or not to pave on top of the old infrastructure? That's what
Very valid question,
we
yeah.
have to have that discussion to see
Right.
where's
I
the
agree.
risk and where is it not? I mean, it's not to say that the water main replacement is driving the bus on repaving. It's just so happened in that case, they were, as well as initially Connolly and Rotary. That conversation was all kind of tied around water main replacements. So, and this is just new. This is fresh and new as of this past Friday.
Mr. Chairman? I guess I see it. We know why, we have more roads and stuff, because we balanced the budget over the years, and we have done no improvements, and the reason was to get finances in line. There's no doubt about it. Our residents asked us to balance the budget, and we know at the cost, it was the only other place that, we saved by reducing staff, putting more on the existing staff, and reducing expenses. So we can do it if our revenue is less, which it is. So we got a 5-year road program here. Okay, so you got for 2022, we know it's the horseshoe, okay, and Alexander and Dunham, all right, which we did some grant money there. And then next year, we have slated Rotary and Barclay Estates. We're going to be in the same position. Chances are even if they start some development up at the corner, maybe we'll get some more revenue from the construction workers, but not a lot to really change the situation. So it really comes down to, do we want to add it to our notes or bond it out? You also do have what you're saying here. You got an issue, okay, what you do this year or what you do next year. But really, we're in the same financial shape we're going to be in next year, more or less. So
Right.
you'll be having the same discussion about Barclay if you follow the 5-year road program, or are we better off doing Barclay along with the horseshoe, because the note would be, or saying our interest rate's going to be higher or whatever. But then you come to the point: do we want to put the village more in debt? The bottom line is really, how are we going to finance it? Or do we want to finance it?
Well, that's the question, the exact question I had.
That's
for-
really where we're at.
For the
I mean,
finance.
that's just how I
is where
really see it.
We know we have to do it, we have to have that road program, but we also know that we have to be able to pay back that debt, and we only have a little over $1 million in the bank. So we can't go in the red too much. That's my concern. And so I want to know with these numbers, and I know that Angela gave a couple different scenarios with lumping in the roof of this building, and that's $400,000, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, ballpark $400,000. So that's adding an additional, $900,000 onto our debt. What's that payment look like? And that's what I want to know. And I also want to know, well, it goes along with what the payment looks like, is how many years. We know that different projects have different funding allowances as far as years. So what does that look as far as budgeting a roof in this bond as opposed to budgeting a road, and it may have to be paid back sooner. So those are the questions I have for the fiscal officer. For what it's worth for me, I appreciate Mr. Giuliotti's candor and expertise, and
My pleasure.
oh yeah, it's very much appreciated. And I would, for my recommendation, other than the money aspect, which we have to talk about maybe possibly tonight at the COW, is my recommendation would be to stick with the plan and just do that entire horseshoe as recommended by the engineer. I have no problem doing Barclay as was suggested by you, but it doesn't appear that that's going to give us anything other than just doing Barclay. We're going to do one road, and I fully appreciate your idea on you do the one road in that horseshoe, and then you're not getting any type of economy of scale to do that. So that would be, as I'm sitting here right now, Mr. Chair, that would be my recommendation. I don't know what your thoughts are or discussion on that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Thank you, Mr. Svisnagle. The other piece that Mr. Gelati, last Tuesday we had a little discussion around this when we were presented the updated road program, as well as the discussion on the roof. And so initially the discussion on the roof was centered around a possibility of it being a 2022 project. And then, Mayor had mentioned that material may not be available until 2023. Well, so being the council person that still has Barclay on his mind, no shame, I'm sorry.
Well, we do get a lot of complaints.
I know a few people. Well, let me say this. I know a few people that have twisted their ankles. I know a few people that have fallen off, not me, children that have fallen off their bicycles because of the crumbling asphalt on the turnarounds, and people who walk in the direction of facing the traffic, not by choice, but whatever. And I know some people say you should do that anyway. But so then when there was the discussion about the roof, like the material may not be available until 2023. And that's where, I said, well, you know what, if we're talking about doing that project in 22, but the material may not be in 23, again, is this another opportunity to reconsider? If we're going to talk about those similar dollars, the roof and Barclay, that's where I brought Barclay into that discussion as a swap for the roof. Of course, we don't know what the material market's going to do. I don't know. So yeah, I am a stern. It is very high on my wish list that if it's possible, and Angela's not here to answer our questions, but we'll be here later on this evening. she, you know, she's presented an argument to some degree that it would be not more feasible, but cheaper for us to get the larger amount. The interest rate would be lower if we did that as a lump right now. But she, you know, we need to hear from her. We need to hear from her. So.
Mr. Chair, we did get one question from a resident. So unless we live in the horseshoe, what is the commitment? I guess they are asking about the commitment to do the other streets, or I don't know if you want to type in, are you talking about the commitment specifically to Barclay or to other streets in the village? My response to that would be our commitment is what the engineer has laid out for us, considering being able to pay for it, and finding the funds to do that, and discussing with the and the residents said yes. So that would be my answer, would be to stick with this plan. And this isn't the first plan, and it hasn't changed all that much. I mean, little bits and pieces, but we've had this from the engineers for quite some time. Road repairs in Barclay, the person is stating. Barclay, according to this plan, was it 23? 2023, according to the engineering plan, is when they want to do Barclay. So if we stick with this plan and we have the funding, and quite frankly, we're going to have to go into more debt to do it, and it's a matter of our income, if our income is going to support that debt. Now, nobody's going to want to hear this, and I am not in any way, shape, or form recommending this at all. As a matter of fact, I would not recommend it. But other municipalities, they do a sidewalk or they do a street, the houses on that street or in front of that sidewalk get assessed.
It's assessment by necessity.
Exactly.
There's 59 homes in Berkeley Estates.
Yeah.
So, and I've said in other public meetings, it comes down to finances,
Yeah.
is what it comes down to. Because throwing my 2 cents, because we're in the situation we're in, a lot of this on several roads is coming to a head all at once,
Right.
including the roof. And it's a financial matter. It's the funding. I mean, I'm sure the engineer could put together plans and open bid for a dozen roads.
Oh, absolutely.
So it comes to funding, but to what you said, yes, there's other ways to finance it. So.
Yeah, I mean, so that would be my answer to this resident. I don't know, and I certainly don't want to speak for anybody else in the room, but does anybody else wish to?
Mr. Chairman, I guess where I think and the reason I think is maybe, the reason I'm bringing it up, because maybe more discussion we have here will help us tonight and next week. Because I know what's on the agenda tonight, when we don't have to, but is we do have legislation that we can pass the existing, not pass the existing, but the renewal, which we have to do, but still make a decision next week and still end up in the same place. You know what I mean? It's not going to cost us any more money or do anything, but at least part of it that we have to do anyways for our note would be done. And then it would be a question of whether or not there's any new money, okay? Because that's the question we're talking about, is any new money. As far as the renewal of the note, we have to do that. You know, there's no, that's a housekeeping thing, that's something we have to do unless we had some other way. We would say we're gonna pay it back differently, or, you know, we're gonna pay the sum right now. The other part that is different is the new money. I think I'm answering that correctly. But with that said, what was put on the table was the roof, okay? And I think what discussion is, are we going to do the new money for the roof in this year? Or if they're not gonna do the new money for the roof, are you gonna do the new money for the repaving of another development, let's say Barclay Estates? Because the question's gonna be the new money, right? And part of the question was the roof, which falls under the infrastructure committee too. You know,
For me, it all comes, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Chair.
we don't have
and
to talk about
Mr.
it, I'm just throwing it out.
Mr. Whedon, it all comes down, to me, there's no sense in, I don't want to say there's no sense, but to pontificate on it for a long time, we're not going to get anywhere, because unless we know the financial end to it, of how much it's really going to cost us in terms of the budget allocation for next year. And, I mean, we can throw that into the mix and see, and then take it out. I don't have any problem doing that, or leave it in if we can afford it. We know we've got leaks and everything in here. But I was going to say, speaking of Barclay, now, for the resident who asked the question, I don't know if they know that we did, in previous infrastructure meetings, come to a recommendation of allocating $50,000 in next year's budget, and Mr. Gelati had recommended that and said, don't let me put words in your mouth, that would go quite a long way into spot repairing. Is that the correct term? Spot
Yes.
repairing these roads. Could you maybe address Barclay as far as spot repairing? How much? Give us an idea of what that would do in Barclay Estates
Well,
for next year, and we're talking next spring.
yeah, I mean, a dollar amount of $50,000, that goes a long way as far as spot repairs. You can catch pretty much all the areas, probably around the village, areas where his crew has been cold patching historically. You'd be surprised how far that goes.
And that is, can you explain what a spot repair is?
Oh, yeah, a spot repair, like we're discussing would be just a 2-inch in-depth repair in a rectangular fashion, you know, maybe just half the width of the road wide for 20 or 30 feet, whatever the bad area is. You know, they'll install it with a paving machine and a roller. It's not hand-placed material or hand-compacted material, so it's a proper asphalt spot repair. And you'll get some life out of it, and it'll certainly hold you over for a number of years until you can resurface the whole road.
Okay.
I have a question related to that. So when bidding for that type of work, is it by the dollar amount, or is it by the linear?
By the square yard.
By square yard.
Yeah.
So it estimate X, so that would be part of, you know, prior to the spring, X number of square yards of work, and we hope it comes up around the $50,000.
Yeah.
So the bidders will be bidding on they will be
Yeah, they'll be
supplying
getting
the
by the
unit
square
cost.
yard, by the unit cost, yeah.
Ms. Allen?
Rob, can you speak to the roof? I believe that when I talked to you, you said we are at the point where it just cannot keep being repaired, that is like a real necessity right now. We don't really have any more years to put it off, or, I mean, this isn't
Honestly,
construction too, and that's something that.
Honestly, I don't know how to approach council, because there's other things I brought in front of council that needed to be repaired years ago. And I'm not saying that, and I'm being as nice as I can. If we have absolutely no money and we cannot do the roof, my guys will keep it patched up for one more year. I know it's a lot of money that we're talking about, but my report that I got from the Garland Company, the report's actually from 16, was the original report, where we had saturated insulation on the roof. We have multiple roofs up there. We've replaced in-house an entire section of membrane on the west side of this courtroom here. So like the trucks, we can keep fixing it as long as we can keep fixing it. But at some point, it's gonna come to a head. That's all. So, I don't know. I'm not a good salesman. I don't come up and say, I need 3 trucks right now, and you give me 1. That's not what I'm doing. Or, I need a roof right now. The 2016 report by an independent, the guy's not selling the roofing material or the labor to us. 2016 report says that we had saturated insulation. We repaired the best we can. There are pinholes present everywhere. I'm certain, even with our repair, there's more saturated insulation up there. Unfortunately, I go to the original, I was looking for the documentation of when it was replaced in the 90s. I don't know how that job was done back then. It's an EPDM that's over a couple different roof layers. So I'm sure it was the cheapest bid at the time, and that's the product we got, and that's what we're living with. Sorry for such a winded answer.
No, because, well, see, I was that, 16 was prior to me. So to me, this is just a couple of times that you mentioned the roof, most recently. But my understanding also, and I know that you guys need trucks and everything else, and we had 3 or 4 police cars that were all out of service, at the same time. But when we issue these notes, my understanding is that these notes can only be issued for projects, which would be like the roof or the roads. I don't know, I would have to talk to Angela more about that.
I think that's where Angela was speaking about writing it more broad.
Right.
Because if needed, you allocate, we have a roundabout number, you allocate funding, and then you could write it more broad, so it could be utilized for other roofs on other facilities in the
Right.
village, so.
Right, but I don't know that, and I don't know if anybody else does, I don't know.
Oh, you're
that-
saying specifically a
that
roof,
we
a
can
note for a
utilize-
roof if it can be utilized?
Right.
That's a Angela question.
But can we utilize that money also? Can we write these notes for vehicles?
I don't believe you can because they have such a short life.
That's what I thought, and that's why I'm saying this is more project specific, and if there is extra, then she could check the other, building, well, Rob would be the one, to let us know, but.
Mhm.
What we would be talking about, Mr. Chairman, would be whether or not to add more money for the roof or for Barclay Estates or any other projects. But the two is, we're not gonna bring up other ones, what's in front of us is the roof in Barclay Estates.
Mhm.
Well, actually, the roof and the horseshoe.
The
And then the
horseshoe,
possibility of
yeah,
adding parking.
but those, yeah, but those you've already, well, you didn't, but they're there. Those
Mr.
have
Chair,
already been-
question
Those
I,
have already been considered. The new money is the roof in Barclay Estates.
for new, yeah. A question I had that probably won't be answered, I'm sure won't be answered tonight, well, maybe somebody knows. The thing that Angela gave us with the email that said the Dunham Road, she's adding the 2.6 million in for Dunham Road just in case, is a stopgap, just in case that check doesn't get to us in time. And then $1,190,000 in the rollover from our previous debt. That adds up to $3,790,000. In her chart here for renewal only, it's $3,895,000. So where is the other $105,000 at? That was a question I had for Angela.
I think those initial numbers from Angela that were written out in the email were just an estimate.
A broad estimate,
Yeah.
probably. Okay. Well, Mr. Chair, that would be my personal recommendation of one of 3 on here and one of 6 on the general council to stick with the plan, do the horseshoe as far as the engineering goes, and further discussion on the financial end of it. But as far as the engineering goes, to stick with the plan. And do the $50,000 spot repairs where needed for next year. That would be my recommendation. I don't know what the other two members
Certainly
feel.
can bring this up for a vote.
Yeah,
I'm sure
Chair-
Councilman Whedon wants
Yeah,
to
Chairman
discuss.
Linville, I respect Mr. Smithnagel's recommendation, but I would hold any recommendation until we heard from our fiscal officer. I mean, holding to the
Yeah.
plan that's a clear direction. However, she had some other options for us, but we don't know exactly what our ability to repay is. So I would hold any recommendation until we heard from our fiscal officer.
Anything else?
But you would, just for clarity, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And my recommendation only goes as far as sticking with the road engineering plan. It does not include adding the roof and pending further financial discussion.
Right.
So I guess we're on the same page with
Right.
that. That would
Right.
be, we would be together on that.
Right.
So, Mr. Chairman, just so I understand, so what you're saying, as of right now, depending on the financial issue, it would be the repaving of the horseshoe and the repairs of the water line on Tulip and the repaving of the horseshoe. So no roof right now and no added road repairs.
And with the exception of the, whatever the number of square feet for spot repairs that we previously talked about. That aspect, that piece.
And I don't,
Although that's not on here. Is that on here?
I want you to understand, I'm in the same boat as council here. You know, we are concerned for our financial well-being and what we can afford and what we can spend. There's no doubt about it. But the thing that we have said, and we know where we're at, and we've been saying for the last couple of years, is we know we might have to, these are for the notes, either increase our note or bond it out. And we know if we bond it out, it costs more money, a little more interest rate, but road projects are good for bonds. A lot of communities do bond them out. And the reason I just say that because we do know that there's a good chance interest rates will go up next year. And I don't see the situation changing, so if we want to stick with this 5-year road plan, it's really going to be important that we really decide, because next year, when you're looking at the road plan for 2023, for the following year, we might be saying the same thing. What we don't want to say is, well, God, I wish we would have took the money at a lesser rate.
Sure.
I guess that's all I want to say. So I guess I agree with you. We'll hear from Angela tonight, and we got next week, and if we bond it out, and we got even longer, we can always still bond things out. We don't have to add them to this note.
We have been, Mayor, well, I guess a general question for everybody. We have been rolling those notes over year after year, correct?
Correct.
That's my memory
Right.
of the finances. We've been rolling that over year after year because it's better for us to do that. Yeah, I would say the direction would be just as Councilman Whedon said, stay with the road program and have further so we've got it clear, just so I'm clear here, we've got it clear that we're going to stick with doing the horseshoe, at least that's with the plan. Is that what we're doing for next year? Do the horseshoe as per planned, and then pending further discussions on the other stuff of the finances tonight and next week, we can either add to that or not.
Correct.
Anything else?
Yeah, I just had one quick one. This is for Mr. Gelati on their other business. I know we've talked about this a little bit in council meetings where you were not present. So just wanted to inquire on basically when, and I'll use Dunham Road, that's a good example, or the most recent example. Typically, when a project like that is done, does you or Cuyahoga Valley Engineering, is there a project closeout document that summarizes from, engineer's estimate to the cost of the actual bid award, change orders, deducts, and then the final, is there typically a project closeout report that council can have for these projects?
Yeah,
I
there
think
is
it's-
always a, I guess we will call it closeout change order.
Mhm.
Summarizes all of the construction costs, overages and underages. So that document is always created at the end of the conclusion of a project. Once all the final invoicing is in, usually takes a while to actually get to that document. So yes, that document is always created and certainly can be shared with anybody.
Okay, I just want to say, 'cause I think it's important for us, especially like the conversation we're having now about finances and funding and grants and things like that. We know that, there are several areas where, grants are applied. And I think it's just good to have documented how our projects are, how they come in from start to finish. In it, so we have a historical record, and we can go back and say, you know what, when in 2020 and 2021, when the Dunham Road project, this is how it was done, and this is how it went out, this is how it was done. I think it's just important
Yeah,
for us
create
to
the
be.
history for
Right,
in the future. Sure.
right.
Mhm.
And of course, not gonna go back to Alexander Road or anything, but I think Dunham is would be a good place, good place to start, something like that.
Well, we've been cataloging those sorts of things all along, though, haven't we? I mean, so, all right.
And just, Mr. Chair, for the 2023 program, the 2022 program, the estimate is to add a total of, in roundabout numbers, $362,000. That's what it's going to cost us. That includes doing what we've already addressed, the Dunham, Walton, Egbert, Sagamore. And that includes then the Hickory 2 of Chestnut. In 2023, we're looking at $667,000 additional, which does include, again, Barclay Estates. So next 2 years, we've got $1 million of additional debt. So that's the egg we have to crack. And
So, Ms. Allen, you got something to add?
Yeah, Joe, what, I know we probably can't give exact, but as an estimate, the life of one of the roads, and I'm specifically asking about the side streets, not our main roads.
Yeah.
Just because I'm looking at how long we would be taking this debt out for.
Sure. So a good rule of thumb would be 20 years, and that coincides with, or coincidentally enough, OPWC grant funding program that we're all familiar with. If they provide you funding in the form of a loan, not a grant, but they do also have a kind of a secondary loan program. If they provide you only with the loan, the terms of the loan is 20 years for exactly that reason. The idea being that the life of the loan is the life of the road.
So as soon as we finish paying off the loan, we're gonna be repaving that road again, essentially.
maybe not. Some of our roads have been the 80s, so yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
the
we
horseshoe 83.
may not be living Then I hate to say that, but that's,
Well, yeah, hopefully the actual, secondary roads would get a longer lifespan
Right.
than that 20 years. We shall see.
Does that conclude our meeting?
that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Sorry?
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, ask for adjournment?
Chairman Linville, I ask for adjournment of the Walton Hills Infrastructure Committee meeting.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Spitznagel. Motion by Mr.
Sweden.
Vote on the motion.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Motion carried.
3:59 p.m.
Yes, 3:59 PM.
Thank you for watching the meeting, and again, it can be reviewed on YouTube.
Take a short recess.
Ending stream. Stream will stop immediately and no longer be live. End.